Poor twin sisters leave a note in the church pew. The young billionaire reads it and starts to cry. Graham didn't know how long he'd been walking. His feet ached, but he kept going. One street, then another. The sun had disappeared hours ago, and the city lights blinked as if trying to talk to him. But Graham didn't want to talk to anyone. 3 weeks. That was it. 3 weeks since he buried his mother. The apartment was too quiet. Every corner reminded him of her. Her favorite mug was still in the sink, with a smear of pink lipstick on the rim. Her reading glasses on the nightstand, still open to the book she never finished. Graham tried to stay home after the funeral, but the walls seemed to close in more each day. That's why he left. With no destination, in no hurry. The neighborhood was familiar. He had grown up there. He passed the bakery where his mom bought bread every Saturday morning, the park bench where she sat to feed the pigeons, the gas station where she always stopped for mints because she said they helped her think better. Memories on every corner, they all hurt. Graham stopped at a red light and looked both ways. Cars rushed past. People walked with headphones in, lost in their own worlds. Everyone had a place to go. He didn't. The light turned green, but Graham stayed put. A man in a suit pushed past him without apologizing, talking loudly on his phone. A woman with heavy bags walked by, muttering about the traffic. The world kept spinning, even though his had stopped. He took a deep breath and moved on. The night was cold for October. Graham pulled his denim jacket tighter. It was the same jacket he'd worn since college. His mom always said he needed to buy new clothes, that he was already a 32-year-old man. But Graham liked old things. They didn't change. 2 blocks later, he saw the church, St. Matthew's Church. The sign was a bit faded, but he knew that place well. His mother had come here every Sunday for over 15 years. She always invited him, especially after his father died. "Come with me next week," she would say, fixing her blonde hair in front of the mirror. "You'll like it." Reverend James is very nice. Graham always made an excuse. Work, fatigue, laziness, always something. In truth, he didn't really know why he resisted so much. Maybe it was the fear of not knowing how to act, or the fear that God might not really exist. "One day you'll understand," she would say, smiling in that patient way only she knew how. "Pies, when you need peace, you'll know where to find it." The church was closed, but there was a faint light at the entrance. Graham approached slowly. The stone steps were worn by time and the footsteps of thousands of people who had come here seeking something. He sat on the bottom step and rested his elbows on his knees. The cold night wind rustled his blonde hair, which was in need of a cut. He had the same light blue eyes as his mother, the same high forehead, the same crooked smile. She always said they were alike, not just in appearance, but in their stubborn way of facing life. "Too stubborn for your own good," she would joke, ruffling his hair like she did when he was a child. Maybe that's why he never came here with her. Stubbornness, pride, fear of looking weak. Graham had always preferred to solve things on his own, since he was little. It was easier that way. But now he was truly alone, and he no longer knew how to solve anything. Graham looked at the church door. It was dark wood, with wrought iron details. There was a small poster with the service times: Sunday 8:15 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., Wednesday 7 p.m. His mother always went to the 8:1 a.m. Sunday service. "I like it when it's less crowded," she would explain. "I can talk to God without being rushed." Talk to God. Graham never knew how to do that, what to say, how to start. What if God wasn't listening? During the last months of his mother's illness, Graham thought several times about trying, especially on the nights when she coughed too much to sleep, or when she came home from the hospital with another bad result. But he never could. The words would get stuck in his throat. He stood up and approached the door. He pushed it lightly, just to see if it was locked. To his surprise, it gave way easily. The inside was almost dark. Only a few lit candles near the altar created a circle of golden light. The smell of wax and incense was strong, but not unpleasant. Graham entered slowly, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The wooden pews were empty. arranged in perfect rows. Stained glass windows decorated the side walls. At night, they looked like windows to nowhere. On the altar, a simple, light wood cross and a bouquet of white flowers. Graham walked to the middle of the church and stopped. He looked around, trying to imagine his mother there. Where did she sit? What did she think about during her prayers? What conversations did she have with God? He sat in one of the middle pews. He remained silent, listening only to his own breathing. He didn't know how to pray, didn't know the right words, but maybe just being there was something. His mother always said God didn't need fancy words, just sincerity. But Graham couldn't even be sincere with himself. How could he be with God? "I'm sorry," he whispered into the void. He didn't know why he was apologizing, but he felt he had to. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." His voice echoed softly in the empty space. It was strange to talk to himself, but it was also liberating. He stayed there for a few minutes, trying to feel what his mother felt in that place. The peace she said she found. Graham wanted to feel that too, but all he could feel was a huge emptiness. As he stood up to leave, something on the floor caught his attention. A small piece of paper, folded carefully. It was near the altar, half hidden behind one of the front pews. Graham hesitated. Was it right to pick it up? But curiosity was stronger. He bent down and carefully picked up the paper. It was a handwritten note, in a clearly childish script. The blue ink was a little smudged, as if tears had fallen on the words. The letters were neat, the way children write when they want something to look nice. "Please, God, heal our mom." Graham read it once, then again, and one more time. Tears began to stream down his face. Something tightened in his chest, like a fist clenching around his heart. It wasn't pain, exactly. It was, recognition. As if those words were his, too. As if someone had written exactly what he had wanted to say but never could. He carefully folded the paper and put it in his jacket pocket. He looked at the altars, at the cross, at the flickering candles. Someone had come here to ask for the same thing he wished he had asked for, but he was too late. His mother was already gone. And whoever wrote this, was there still time? The handwriting was a child's, that was obvious. Maybe two children, since it said, "Our mom." Siblings, probably. Graham imagined two little blonde kids writing that desperate plea with all the hope in the world. He left the church without making a sound, but the note continued to burn in his pocket the whole walk home. He couldn't stop thinking about those words. Who had written them? Where did they live? Why were they asking for their mom? When he got home, he turned on the television just to have some noise, but he didn't pay attention to what was on. He sat on the sofa where his mother used to knit and took the note out of his pocket. He read it again, paying attention to every detail. The handwriting was round, careful. Whoever wrote it had been patient, wanting it to be legible. The paper was ordinary, torn from a school notebook. Graham imagined the scene, a child or two entering the church with that piece of paper, walking up to the altar, nervous perhaps, leaving the note there and quickly leaving. Or maybe they stayed for a bit, praying the only way they knew how, the same hope he hadn't had the courage to have. Throughout his mother's life, especially in the last 2 years when the cancer came back, Graham knew she was losing the battle. The doctors were clear from the beginning, but he could never accept it. He pretended everything would be fine. He pretended the doctors were wrong. He pretended until the very last day he never prayed for her. He never asked God to heal her. Maybe out of pride, maybe out of fear that God would say no, or maybe out of fear that no one was listening. But whoever wrote that note had courage. They went to the church, wrote their most sincere words, and left them at the foot of the altar. They did what Graham couldn't do. He tried to sleep, but the note wouldn't leave his mind. He tossed and turned in bed, imagining who had written those words. Was their mother sick? Was it serious? Was there hope? The clock read 3 in the morning when Graham gave up on trying to sleep. He got up and went to the living room window. The city was asleep, but he was more awake than ever. He picked up the note from the kitchen table and read it one more time. Please, God, heal our mum. Why did it touch him so much? It was just a note, words from someone who probably wouldn't even know who he was. But something in those words moved him in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe it was because whoever wrote it had faith where he had fear. Maybe it was because they asked for help where he remained silent. Or maybe it was because the note made him feel less alone in the world. He wasn't alone in his pain. Someone else was also going through it. Someone else also had a sick mother and needed a miracle. He made some coffee and sat in the kitchen until the sun came up. By the time light started streaming through the window, Graham had made a decision. He couldn't explain why, but he knew he had to go back to the church. It was Saturday. The streets were quieter. Graham took a shower, put on a clean shirt, and left the house. The note was in his pocket, carefully folded. St. Matthew's Church was a 20-minute walk away. Graham wasn't in a hurry. He needed to understand why those words wouldn't leave his head. Why he cared so much about someone he didn't even know. The church was open. It was mid-morning and a few people were coming and going. Well-dressed families, elderly couples, a few people alone like him. Graham watched them from a distance. He waited for everyone to leave and then went in slowly. The daylight made the church look completely different. The stained glass windows shone with color. The altar seemed more welcoming, and the flowers had been replaced with fresher ones. Graham walked to the spot where he had found the note the night before. He sat in the front pew and took the paper out of his pocket. Right here, in this very place, someone had poured out their heart. They had asked for the impossible, with the simplicity of someone who still believes in miracles. Graham closed his eyes and tried to feel what they felt. The desperation, the hope, the love for a mother who was suffering. It was the same thing he had felt, but had never been able to express. And for the first time in 3 weeks, since his mother died, Graham truly cried. Not from sadness, exactly. It was something more complex. It was regret for what he hadn't done, admiration for brave children he didn't even know, and a strange desire to do something. He opened his eyes and looked at the cross on the altar. If God existed, if he really heard people's prayers, maybe it was time for Graham to start his own conversation. "I don't know if you're there," he whispered, his voice still hoarse from crying. "I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, take care of whoever wrote this, and their mother too." He paused and took a deep breath. "I couldn't ask for my mum. I was scared, I was proud, but I'm asking for this family now. If you can help, please help." It was strange talking to himself in that place, but it was also liberating, as if he was finally doing something instead of just waiting for the pain to pass. He stayed there for a few more minutes, in silence. The note was still in his hands, but now it felt less like a burden and more like a purpose. When he left the church, Graham knew he would be back. He didn't know when or why, but he would return. Maybe to see if more notes appeared, maybe to try and find who had written that one, or maybe just to continue the conversation he had started. The note had touched something in him that he thought had died with his mother. Hope, perhaps, or the will to care about something beyond his own pain. He walked back home, but his steps felt lighter. The sun was brighter and the streets seemed more alive. And for the first time in weeks, Graham felt that maybe life still had some meaning, even if he didn't know what it was yet. Graham arrived at the church on Sunday morning. He didn't know why he had come back, but the note had been burning in his pocket since Friday. 2 nights without proper sleep, thinking about those words written in a child's hand, "Please God, heal our mum." The church bell struck 8 as he climbed the stone steps. The Sunday service was starting, but Graham didn't go in. He stayed outside, watching the people arrive. Entire families, elderly couples, a few people alone like him. He waited. He didn't know for what, but he waited. 40 minutes later, the doors opened and people started to leave. Graham stepped back a little, watching each face. He was looking for something, some sign that... That's when he saw them. 2 little blonde girls were leaving the church, holding hands. One was a little taller than the other, but they were clearly sisters. Both had golden hair that shone in the morning sun, and light blue eyes that reminded him of a winter sky. They wore simple but clean clothes, white t-shirts and navy blue skirts, that looked like they had been washed many times. Graham felt his heart race. It was them. He was sure of it. The girls came down the steps slowly, talking quietly to each other. The taller one was holding something in her hands. It looked like a drawing on a piece of paper. The smaller one was holding a rag doll with frayed hair. Graham took a deep breath and approached them. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound as non-threatening as possible. "Were you two in the church?" The girls stopped and looked at him. The older one, who must have been about 5, took a protective step forward. The smaller one hid behind her sister but peeked out with curiosity. "We were," said the older one. "Why?" Graham took the note out of his pocket and unfolded it carefully. He showed it to them. "Did you write this?" The two girls' blue eyes widened. The smaller one came out from behind her sister and pointed at the paper. "That's ours," she said, in a thin, sweet voice. "Where did you find it?" "Here at the church," Graham replied, crouching down to be at their level. "On Friday night. It was on the floor near the altar." The older girl took the note and looked at it carefully, as if checking that everything was right. "I wrote it," she said. "Ivy helped me choose the words. We left it for God." Graham felt something stir in his chest. It really was them, the authors of those words that wouldn't leave his mind. "I'm Graham," he said. "What are your names?" "I'm Lila," said the older one, still holding the note. "And she's my sister, Ivy. We're 5 years old." "You're both 5. "We're twins," Ivy explained, stepping out completely from behind her sister. "But I was born 3 minutes later, so Lila is older." Graham smiled. It was the first real smile in weeks. "Is it about your mum?" he asked, pointing to the note. "What you wrote?" Lila and Ivy looked at each other. There was a sadness in their eyes that didn't match their age. "Mommy is very, very sick," Lila said, her voice growing quiet. "She can't get out of bed anymore." "It's been many days since she got up," Ivy added, hugging her doll tighter. "That we've even forgotten how many." "And you're alone with her?" Graham asked, concerned. "It's just the 3 of us," Lila replied. "It's always been this way. Us, Mommy, and no one else." "Mommy worked at a laundromat," Ivy explained. "She washed clothes and earned money to buy us food. But she stopped going to work when she got sick," Lila continued. "First she was going slow, then she said she couldn't go anymore." Graham felt his stomach clench. 2 5-year-old children alone with a sick, jobless mother. How long has she been out of work? "About 2 weeks, Lila said, counting on her little fingers. "Maybe 3. "We don't remember exactly. And you're managing on your own." "We know how to do some things," Ivy said, trying to sound brave. "Lila learned how to make oatmeal and sandwiches. And Ivy knows how to make the bed and fold clothes," Lila added. "Mommy taught us before she got really bad. But now she barely talks anymore," Ivy said, her voice starting to tremble. "She just lies there, sleeping a lot. Sometimes we call her and she doesn't answer," Lila whispered. "That's why we got scared." Graham looked at the 2 little girls and felt an overwhelming urge to help. He didn't know how, but he knew he had to do something. "So is that why you came to the church?" "Mommy always says that when we have problems, we can talk to God," Lila explained. "She comes here every Sunday and says God listens." "But this time, Mommy couldn't come," Ivy said. "So we came by ourselves." "We wrote the note because we didn't really know how to ask," Lila continued. Mommy always prays with beautiful words, but we don't know those words. "So we decided to write it our own way," Ivy added. Graham was impressed by their courage. "You came here alone. Isn't it far from home?" "We know the way," Lila said. "Mommy brought us many times and we always walked together. But it was the first time we came without Mommy," Ivy admitted. It was a little scary. Graham didn't know what to say. How could he explain that he'd found the note by chance? That he couldn't stop thinking about them? That he felt like he needed to help? "I lost my mom a little while ago," he said finally. "And when I found your note, I felt that maybe I could help in some way." Ivy took a step closer and looked right into Graham's blue eyes. "You seem nice," she said, "and you have the same eyes as us." "I think God sent you," Lila said suddenly. Graham blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "We asked God to help Mommy," Lila explained, "and now you showed up with our note. It can't be a coincidence." "Mommy says sometimes it's not a coincidence," Ivy added. "Sometimes it's God arranging things." Graham was speechless for a moment. The simple faith of these two little girls was something he had never seen before. "Do you want to take me to meet your mom?" he asked. "Can you help her?" Lila asked, but this time there was desperation in her voice. "I can try," Graham answered. "I can't promise anything, but I can try." The two looked at each other again, communicating with their eyes as only twin sisters can. Then Lila nodded. "Let's go," she said. "But you need to know. She's very sick." Graham walked alongside the two girls through the neighborhood streets. Along the way, they shared more details about how it all started. "At first, Mommy was just very tired," Lila explained. "She'd get home from work and go straight to bed. Then she started saying everything hurt," Ivy continued. "To her back and her head, her legs. Then she missed one day of work, then 2 days, then a whole week," Lila recounted. "Her boss called to ask, but she said she couldn't go. And now it's been many days since she's left the bed," Ivy said sadly. "We bring her food, but she barely eats. Yesterday she tried to get up to go to the bathroom and almost fell," Lila said, holding Graham's hand tightly. "We had to help her. And she's always really hot," Ivy added, "but she shivers a lot too." Graham felt a knot in his stomach. This sounded very serious. "So do you have food at home?" "There's still a little bit," Lila said, "but it's running out. We don't know what to do when it's gone." "Mommy always took care of those things," Ivy explained. "We just helped." "This is it," Lila said, stopping in front of a small red brick house. The house had a small porch with 2 white plastic chairs. The front yard was neglected, with tall grass and some dry plants. It didn't look abandoned, but rather like there was no energy left to take care of it. "Mommy!" Ivy called softly, opening the front door. "We're back!" There was no answer. Graham hesitated at the door. Was it right to enter the home of people he didn't know? But Lila pulled him by the hand. "Si, come on," she whispered. "Mommy's in the bedroom. She sleeps a lot now." The house inside was small but had once been cozy. A simple living room with a blue fabric sofa and an old television. The kitchen next to it, with a small table and 2 high chairs for the girls. But Graham could see clear signs that things were not right. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes scattered about, medicine everywhere, half-empty glasses of water abandoned in various places. "Mommy," Lila called softly, knocking lightly on the bedroom door. "There's a visitor here." A faint sound came from inside the room. It was almost a moan. "She's awake," Ivy whispered to Graham. "But sometimes she can't talk right." Lila slowly opened the door. What Graham saw made him hold his breath. The woman in the bed was clearly very ill. She had the same blonde hair as the girls, but now it was matted with sweat on her forehead. The same light blue eyes, but they were glazed and unfocused. She was covered with several blankets, but was still shivering. Her face was as pale as paper, with dry, chapped lips. "Mommy," Lila whispered, approaching the bed. "This is Graham. He found our note." The woman tried to focus her eyes on Graham. When she managed, she moved her lips, but almost no sound came out. Marianne," she managed to whisper. Graham approached slowly. He could see she was making a huge effort just to try to speak. "Hello, Marianne," he said softly. "I'm Graham. Your daughters brought me here." Marianne tried to move in the bed, but only managed a weak motion, her eyes filled with tears. The girls," she managed to say, each word an effort. "They're okay," Graham said quickly. "They are very brave." Marianne closed her eyes for a moment, as if speaking was draining all her energy. When she opened them again, she looked at her daughters. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No, Mommy," Lila said, holding her mother's weak hand. "You didn't do anything wrong." "We're taking care of you," Ivy added, approaching the other side of the bed. Graham watched the scene and felt his heart ache. The situation was much more serious than he had imagined. Marianne clearly had a high fever and was extremely weak. "Marianne," he said quietly, "how long have you been like this?" She tried to answer, but could only make a weak gesture with her hand. "Really bad for many days," Lila answered for her. "But she's been sick for weeks. Have you taken any medicine?" Graham asked. Marianne pointed weakly to the nightstand, where there were several boxes of medicine. Graham looked. They were over-the-counter painkillers. Nothing very strong. "Hospital," Marianne suddenly whispered, trying to move in bed. "I can't." "Why not?" Graham asked. "Money," she managed to say. "The girls," Graham understood. She didn't have money for the hospital and didn't know what to do with her daughters. "Listen," he said, leaning closer to her. "I'm going to take you to the hospital now, and the girls are coming with me." Marianne tried to shake her head. "Don't know you," she whispered. "God sent him, Mommy," Lila said, holding her mother's hand tighter. "He came because we asked for help." Marianne looked at Graham with effort. There was confusion in her eyes, but also a deep exhaustion and desperation. "Trust," she whispered, looking at her daughters. "Yes, Mommy," Ivy said. "He's good." Marianne closed her eyes and nodded almost imperceptibly. Graham didn't waste any time. "Lila, Ivy," he said, "let's pack some things to take. Clothes for you and for Mommy." "Is she going to be okay?" Ivy asked, her eyes full of tears. "We're going to do everything we can," Graham promised. When he tried to help Marianne sit up, she almost fainted. She was burning with fever and could barely stay conscious. "I'll get the car," Graham said. "Lila, stay with Mommy. Ivy, help me get the things." But as Ivy was showing him where the clothes were, Graham heard Lila scream from the bedroom. "Graham, come quick!" He ran back. Marianne was convulsing slightly. Her eyes rolled back. "We're going now," Graham said, lifting Marianne into his arms. She weighed very little. "Dad, we can't wait." "Mommy," Ivy cried out, scared. "She's going to be fine," Graham said, trying to sound calm. "But we need to go to the hospital now." He carried Marianne to the car, with Lila and Ivy running behind him. They were both crying, but trying to be brave. The entire way to the hospital, Graham looked in the rearview mirror at the two little girls in the back seat, holding each other's hands, and he looked at Marianne in the passenger seat, unconscious and breathing with difficulty. "Is she going to be okay?" Lila asked for the third time. "The doctors will help her," Graham replied. "You were very brave to ask for help." "God really did send you," Ivy whispered. Graham drove as fast as he safely could. He didn't know what he was doing. He hadn't known these people for even 2 hours, but he knew, with a certainty he hadn't felt in a long time, that he was doing the right thing. Maybe Lila was right. Maybe God really had sent him. Graham looked at the clock on the hospital waiting room wall. 2 hours had passed since they rushed in with Marianne. The doctors had taken her immediately to an emergency room, and since then, he had been there with Lila and Ivy, waiting for news. The girls were sitting next to him, their little legs dangling from chairs that were too high for them. Lila was holding Ivy's rag doll, while Ivy played with her own blonde hair, making small braids. Both were too quiet for 5-year-olds. "I'm hungry," Ivy whispered to her sister. "Me too," Lila replied softly. "My tummy is rumbling." Graham heard and turned to them. "You haven't eaten today?" "No," Lila answered, shaking her head. "There was no more food at home." "What do you mean there was no food?" Graham asked, concerned. "It all ran out," Ivy explained simply. "The fridge is empty and so are the cupboards." "Yesterday we ate the last crackers we had," Lila added, "and this morning there was nothing left. Mommy always bought food for us on Saturday," Ivy said. "But last Saturday she couldn't get out of bed, and the food ran out little by little," Lila continued. "First the milk, then the bread, then the cheese." Graham's heart ached. Not only was their mother sick, but the girls were starving. "You haven't eaten anything since yesterday? Just the crackers?" Lila confirmed. And today we didn't even drink much water because we were worried about Mommy. How about we go get some lunch? Graham suggested. There's a diner nearby. The doctors said they'll still be a while examining your mom. Lila looked worriedly at the emergency room door. What if Mommy wakes up and we're not here? I'll talk to the nurse, Graham said. I'll leave my number and ask them to call us if there's any news. Graham got up and went to the information desk. He spoke briefly with a nurse, who wrote down his cell phone number and promised to call if there was any change in Marianne's condition. All set, he said, returning to the girls. Now we can go get something to eat. The diner was across the street. It was a simple place, with blue formica tables and red plastic chairs, the kind of place families with kids would go. Graham chose a table by the window, where they could see the hospital entrance. Can I order whatever I want? Ivy asked, looking at the menu with wide eyes. Of course, Graham replied. What do you like to eat? I love burgers, Ivy said, excited for the first time all day. With fries, but Mommy only bought them sometimes. Then let's have burgers with fries, Graham decided. And juice. What flavor do you like? Orange, they both said at the same time and laughed. It was good to see them smile. Graham placed the order and returned to the table. The girls were talking quietly, pointing to the hospital across the street. Are you worried about your mom? He asked, sitting down. A lot, Lila answered honestly. She's never been this sick before. Mommy is very strong, Ivy added. Ivy. Aunt, she always takes care of us, even when she's tired. How long have you been without food at home? A few days, Lila thought. We lost count. Maybe a week. At first, there were still some things, Ivy explained, but it ran out and Mommy couldn't go out to buy more. We didn't know what to do, Lila said. We've never been without food before. The waiter brought the orange juices. The girls drank them eagerly as if they were truly thirsty. And it's just the three of you at home? Graham asked carefully. The girls looked at each other. Yes, Lila replied. It's always been this way. Since we were born? Ivy added. Mommy says that when we left the hospital as babies, we went straight home, just the three of us. And your father? Graham asked gently. Lila stopped drinking and looked at him. We don't have a dad, she said simply. We never have, Ivy added. Mommy says some families are different. Ours is Mommy, Lila, and Ivy. That's it. You never asked about him. We have, Lila admitted, when we were little and saw other kids with dads. And what did your mum say? That she loved us so much it was like two parents in one person, Ivy answered. And that God made our family special like this. Graham was impressed with Marianne's wisdom in explaining the situation to two young children. And you never missed having one? Sometimes, Lila confessed, when we saw other families at the park or at school. But Mommy always does mom things and dad things, Ivy said. She plays ball with us, teaches us how to fix things, and also does our hair. And she's the best at all of those things, Lila added with pride. The waiter brought the burgers. They were too big for the girls, but they attacked them with real hunger. Graham watched them eat eagerly and realized just how hungry they really were. This is delicious, Ivy said, with sauce on the corner of her mouth. It's the first real food we've had in days, Lila said, chewing slowly as if she wanted to savor every bite. Why didn't you ask for help sooner? Mommy always tells us not to bother anyone, Ivy said, and we didn't know how to get food by ourselves. We've never been to the grocery store without Mommy, Lila added, and we didn't know how much things cost. So we decided to ask God, Ivy continued. Mommy always says that when we don't know what to do, we can talk to God. And it worked, Lila said, looking at Graham. You showed up. Graham felt something stir in his chest. The faith of these two little girls was impressive, especially considering they were starving. What was it like growing up with just your mom, he asked. Normal for us, Lila replied. We don't know anything else. Mommy works a lot, Ivy said. She leaves early in the morning and comes back in the afternoon, but she always plays with us before bed. And on Sundays, she doesn't work, Lila added. Then we spend the whole day together. We go to the park, to church, sometimes to the grocery store. I like when we go to the grocery store, Ivy said excitedly. Mommy lets us pick out one special thing. One time she let us each pick out ice cream, Lila remembered. We ate it on a park bench. Graham could imagine Marianne working hard to support her daughters, but always finding small ways to make them feel special. And when you get sick, who takes care of you? Mommy, they both answered together. She misses work and stays with us, Lila explained. She makes tea, tells stories, and holds our hand until we get better. That's why we were so scared when she got sick, Ivy said, more seriously. We didn't know how to take care of her properly. And we didn't know how to get food, Lila added. Mommy always did everything. You did the best you could, Graham said. And you were very brave to go to the church and ask for help. It was Lila's idea, Ivy said, proud of her sister. No, it wasn't, Lila protested. It was our idea. Do you always agree on everything? Almost always, Lila replied. Mommy says we were born with the same heart. That's why we always know what the other is thinking, Ivy added. Graham looked at the two blonde-eared, light blue-eyed girls and understood what Marianne meant. They really seemed like two halves of a whole. And what do you like to do together most? Play house, Ivy answered quickly. Lila is always the mommy, and I'm always the daughter. Why are you always the mommy? Graham asked Lila. Because I was born first, she explained seriously. And because I know how to do more things. What kind of things? Cook oatmeal, braid Ivy's hair, and read some words, Lila listed with pride. Lila is very smart, Ivy said, admiring her sister. She teaches me almost everything. And who taught you? Graham asked Lila. Mommy, she answered simply. She always says we need to learn to take care of ourselves. But now Mommy can't teach us anything anymore, Ivy said, sadness returning to her voice. And we don't know what to do when there's no food. Graham reached out and held both of their little hands. You're not going to be alone, he promised. We're going to take care of your mom and you too. Really? Lila asked, her blue eyes shining with hope. Really, Graham confirmed, and you will never be without food again. They finished eating in silence, each lost in thought. Graham paid the bill and they walked back to the hospital. Graham, Ivy called, stopping at the entrance. Yes? Thank you for the burger. It was the best one I've ever eaten. And thank you for giving us food when we were hungry, Lila added. Mommy always says God sends angels to help us. Graham crouched down to be at their level. You are very special girls, he said. And your mom did an amazing job raising you. The two of them smiled, and for a moment they seemed like real 5-year-olds without a care in the world. But when they entered the hospital and saw a doctor approaching, reality returned. It was time to find out how Marianne was doing. The doctor who approached was a tall man with graying hair and a serious expression. Graham stood up immediately, and the girls clung to his legs, one on each side. Are you responsible for the patient, Marianne Williams? The doctor asked. I'm a friend of the family, Graham replied. How is she? The doctor looked at Lila and Ivy, who were staring at him with wide, expectant blue eyes. Can we speak privately? He suggested. No, Lila said quickly. We want to know about Mommy. We're big girls, Ivy added. We can listen. Graham looked at the doctor and nodded. They have a right to know, he said. It's about their mother. The doctor sighed and knelt to be at the girl's level. Your mother is very sick, he said carefully. She has a serious infection in her body. But is she going to get better? Lila asked, her voice trembling. We're going to do everything we can to help her, the doctor replied. But she needs to stay here in the hospital for a while. How long? Ivy asked. A few days, maybe a few weeks, the doctor admitted. Her body is very weak and needs strong medicine. Lila and Ivy looked at each other, their eyes filling with tears. Could she die? Lila whispered. The doctor hesitated for a moment. We're doing everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen, he said. But you need to know that she is very, very sick. Ivy began to cry softly. Lila tried to be strong, but she also had tears streaming down her face. And us? Lila asked. What's going to happen to us? The doctor looked at Graham. Do you have other relatives? Grandparents? Uncles? Aunts? No, Ivy said, sniffling. We only have Mommy. And now Mommy can't take care of us, Lila added, fear clear in her voice. Graham's heart ached. Without a second thought, he crouched down and held the girls' hands. Listen, he said, looking right into their blue eyes. Your mum is going to be okay. The doctors will take care of her, and she will get better. How do you know? Ivy asked, still crying. Because she's strong, Graham answered, and because she has you two to come back to. She won't give up. But what if she can't? Lila asked, her voice breaking. She will, Graham said firmly. I'm sure of it. And us? Lila asked again. Where are we going to stay? Graham took a deep breath. He didn't know where the certainty came from, but the words came out naturally. I'm going to stay with you until she gets better, he said. Really? Ivy asked. Really, Graham confirmed. You're not going to be alone. But you barely know us, Lila said, confused. Knowing someone isn't about time, Graham explained. It's about caring, and I care about you. The doctor watched the scene and nodded in approval. I'll leave you to talk, he said. If you have any questions, I'll be at the nurse's station. When the doctor walked away, the girls threw themselves into Graham's arms, crying. He held them tight, feeling the weight of the promise he had just made. We don't want to be away from Mommy, Lila said, sobbing. You won't be, Graham promised. We'll visit her every day. Can I sleep here? Ivy asked. They can't let you sleep at the hospital, Graham explained. But we can stay here during the day and only go home at night. What home? Lila asked, confused. Graham realized he hadn't thought about the details. Where would the girls stay? At their house, at his apartment? We'll figure that out together, he said. The important thing is that you'll be safe and your mum will get better. And you're really going to stay with us? Ivy asked again, as if she couldn't believe it. I will, Graham repeated. That's my promise to you. In the days that followed, Graham kept his promise rigorously. Every morning at 7:30, he picked up the girls from their house and took them to the hospital. They spent the entire day there, only leaving for lunch and dinner. Marianne continued to sleep most of the time. The doctors said it was because of the strong medications she was taking to fight the infection. But sometimes she would wake up and be able to talk a little with her daughters. Mommy, are you going to get well soon? Ivy would always ask, holding her mother's weak hand. I will, my love, Marianne would whisper. I just need to rest a little more. We're being good, Lila would always add. Graham is taking care of us. Marianne would look at Graham with eyes full of gratitude. Thank you, she would whisper. Graham watched these conversations and saw how much Marianne fought to seem strong in front of her daughters, even though she was clearly very weak. To distract Lila and Ivy during the long hours of waiting, Graham bought paper, colored pencils, modeling clay, and some coloring books. They spent hours drawing in the waiting room, creating colorful stories and characters. Let's make a drawing for Mommy, Ivy suggested on the second day. Good idea, Lila agreed. What should we draw? A family, Ivy said. Me, you, Mommy, and Graham. I don't know how to draw people, Lila admitted. I'll teach you, Graham offered. My mom taught me when I was little. They spent the whole morning making the drawing. Graham showed them how to make simple stick figures, with circles for heads and lines for bodies. The girls laughed when their first drawings came out crooked. Mine looks like an alien, Ivy said, laughing. Mine looks like it's dancing, Lila added. By the third day, they were more confident with their drawings. Look what we made, Ivy said, showing a piece of paper to Graham. It was a strange figure, with thin arms and legs, but a huge head and a giant heart in its chest, colored bright red. How interesting, Graham said, smiling. Who is it? It's you, Lila said proudly. Me? Graham asked him, surprised. Yes, Ivy confirmed. We made the head big because you're very smart. You know a lot of things, Lila explained. Like how to get to the hospital, how to order food at a restaurant, how to read signs. And the big heart because you're very good, Ivy added. It's so there's more room for kindness, she explained seriously. Graham looked at the drawing and felt something stir in his chest. No one had ever drawn him before, and certainly no one had ever depicted him with a big heart. So this is our new friend, Lila said, pointing to the figure on the paper. He's going to take care of us when Mommy can't, Ivy added. And when he gets sad, we'll take care of him too, Lila said. Graham had to blink back tears. In less than a week, these two little girls had completely changed his life. Can I keep the drawing? He asked. Of course, they both said together. We made it for you. Let's make a frame, Ivy suggested. How? Lila asked. With glitter, Ivy said excitedly. Graham laughed. We don't have any glitter here. Then let's do it with flowers, Lila decided. Flowers around the drawing. They spent another hour drawing small, colorful flowers around the figure. Graham folded the paper carefully and put it in his wallet. It was the first gift he had received in a long time. During their lunches at the diner, the girls told stories about their lives, how their mom sang to them to help them sleep, how they played in their small backyard, how they helped their mom fold clothes on weekends. Mommy always says we're a team, Lila recounted. Her, me, and Ivy. And now you're part of the team too, Ivy said to Graham. What do you mean? Graham asked. You help us, we help you, Lila explained. That's what being a team is. Graham smiled. He was part of a team. There was something deeply comforting in that. On the fourth day, while Marianne slept, the girls were drawing again. Graham watched, impressed by their concentration. Lila was drawing a house with many colorful windows, and Ivy was drawing giant flowers around it. Graham? Lila called suddenly, without looking up from the paper. Yes, why did you go to the church that night? The question caught Graham by surprise. He stopped reading the magazine he had picked up and looked at her. Why do you want to know? Just curious, Lila said. Mommy always says people go to church for different reasons. What kind of reasons? Graham asked. Are you to give thanks, to ask for help, to talk to God, Ivy listed, or just to find peace? Graham thought for a moment. How could he explain grief, loneliness, and the desperate search for something to believe in to two 5-year-old girls? My mum used to go to church every Sunday, he said finally. That's the same church where you left the note. Your mum went to our church, Ivy asked, excited. She did. For many, many years, Graham confirmed. And did you go with her? Lila asked. Graham shook his head. No. She always invited me, but I never wanted to go. I always made an excuse. Why? Ivy asked, genuinely curious. I don't know. I think I was scared, Graham admitted. Or lazy, or both. Scared of what? Lila asked. Of not knowing what to do there. Of not being able to talk to God right, Graham explained. But talking to God is easy, Ivy said. You just talk like we're talking now. Is it? Graham asked. Mommy taught us, Lila explained. God likes it when we talk the way we know how. And now your mum doesn't go to church anymore, Ivy asked. Graham took a deep breath. My mum died a few weeks ago, he said softly. Both girls stopped drawing and looked at him with wide eyes. Did she go to heaven? Ivy asked. I think so, Graham replied. That's sad, Lila said. You must miss her a lot. I do, Graham confirmed. I miss her very much. Is that why you went to the church? Ivy asked. Graham nodded. I was feeling very alone, and I remembered my mom always said that when I needed peace, I would know where to find it. And did you find peace there? Lila asked. I found you, Graham said, smiling. And you brought me a peace I wasn't expecting. What do you mean? Ivy asked. Taking care of you made me remember that there are still good things in the world, Graham explained. Ivy dropped her colored pencil and went to Graham, climbing into his lap. "You're not alone anymore," she said, hugging his neck. "Now you have us," Lila added, coming closer as well. Graham hugged them and felt that their words were true. He wasn't alone anymore, and in some strange and wonderful way, taking care of them was helping to heal his own pain. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" Ivy asked. "For letting me be part of your team," Graham explained. "We should be thanking you," Lila said. "So you showed up when we needed you most. Like an angel," Ivy added. "Or like an answer to our prayer," Lila said. Graham looked at the two blonde, light blue-eyed girls and wondered who was helping whom. He had gone to church seeking peace and had found a purpose. He had lost one family and gained another. "Graham," Ivy called. "Yes?" "When Mommy gets better, will you still be our friend?" The question was simple, but loaded with both hope and fear. "Forever," Graham promised, "if you'll have me." "We will," the two said together. "A lot," Lila added. "Can you be like our stand-in dad?" Ivy asked. The question caught Graham off guard. He looked at her, then at Lila. "You want that? We never had a dad," Lila explained. "But you take care of us like we imagine a dad would." "It would be nice to have you in our family," Ivy said. Graham felt his eyes well up with tears. He had lost a family and gained another, without even realizing how it had happened. That night, when he took the girls home, Graham helped them brush their teeth and put them to bed. It was a routine that had become natural in just a few days. "Tell us a story," Ivy asked, snuggling under the covers. "I don't know how to tell stories," Graham admitted. "Any story," Lila said. "Mommy always tells one." Graham thought for a moment. Then he began to tell a story about a man who was lost and sad, until he found two brave little girls who changed his life. The girls giggled when they realized it was about them. "And did they live happily ever after?" Ivy asked, when Graham finished. "They're still living it," Graham said. The story isn't over yet. When the girls fell asleep, Graham sat in the living room of the small house, looking around. In less than a week, this place had become more of a home than his own empty apartment. His cell phone rang. It was the hospital. "Marianne is awake and asking for her daughters," the nurse said. "Taji wants to know if they're okay." "Tell her they're great," Graham replied, "and that we'll visit her again tomorrow." "She also asked me to thank you," the nurse added. "She said you're an angel." Graham hung up the phone and smiled. An angel. It was the second time someone had called him that in a week. Maybe Lila was right. Maybe God really had sent him. Or maybe God had sent the girls to him. In the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that none of them were alone anymore. The phone rang at 6 in the morning. Graham woke with a start, his heart racing. Calls this early usually brought bad news. He fumbled on the nightstand until he found the phone. "Hello? Mr. Graham." It was the familiar voice of the hospital nurse. "I have good news. Marianne is much better today. Her fever has completely gone down, and she's awake, asking to see her daughters." Graham sat up in bed, still processing the information. "Is she really better?" "Much better," the nurse confirmed. "The doctors are impressed with her improvement. The infection is responding well to the treatment." "Can I bring the girls to see her?" "Yes, you can. In fact, she's eager to see them." Graham hung up the phone and for a moment sat on the edge of the bed, feeling immense relief. After a week of worry, Marianne was finally getting better. He arrived at the girls' house earlier than usual. When he knocked on the door, Lila opened it, still in her pajamas, her blonde hair messy from sleep. "Graham," she said, rubbing her eyes, "why are you here so early?" "I have a surprise for you," he said, smiling. "What surprise?" Ivy appeared behind her sister, also in pajamas and with her rag doll under her arm. "Mommy is much better. The hospital called to let me know." The two girls' blue eyes widened. "Really?" Lila asked. "Really? And she's asking to see you?" The girls screamed with joy and hugged each other, jumping around the living room. "Mommy's better. Mommy's better." Ivy sang. "Let's get ready quick," Lila said, already running to the bedroom. Graham laughed, watching their excitement. It was the first time in a week that he had seen the girls completely happy. 20 minutes later, they were ready. Lila had chosen her favorite blue dress, and Ivy was wearing a colorful skirt and a white blouse. Both had carefully combed their blonde hair and were beaming. On the way to the hospital, the girls couldn't stop talking. "Do you think Mommy can come home today?" Ivy asked. "Maybe not today," Graham explained, "but soon." "She'll be happy when we tell her we've been good," Lila said. "And that you took care of us," Ivy added. When they arrived at the hospital, Graham could see the difference immediately. Marianne was sitting up in bed, propped against pillows, with much more color in her face. Her blonde hair was combed and she was smiling, a real smile, not the weak, forced one from the past few days. "Mommy!" they both shouted at the same time, running to the bed. "My girls," Marianne said, opening her arms to receive them. Graham watched the reunion with a lump in his throat. The three of them hugged tightly, crying with joy. It was as if the family was coming together again. "You look much better, Mommy," Lila said, examining her mother's face. "I am, my love," Marianne confirmed. "I feel much stronger today." "We missed you," Ivy said, snuggling into her mother's arm. "Dice, I missed you too," Marianne replied, kissing both of them on the forehead. Then she looked at Graham, who had stayed back a little to give the family space for their reunion. "Graham," she called. "Come here." He approached the bed. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Much better," Marianne answered. "The doctor said the fever is gone and the infection is almost cured." "What a relief," Graham said, and he truly felt it. "Graham took very good care of us," Lila told her mother. "He made food for us, took us to lunch, and even told us stories before bed," Ivy added. Marianne looked at Graham with eyes full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You don't have to," Graham replied. "It was a pleasure taking care of them." The doctor came in for the morning checkup. After checking her temperature, blood pressure, and listening to her lungs, he smiled. "Excellent recovery," he said. "If you keep this up, you could be discharged in 2 or 3 days." "Really?" Marianne asked, excited. "Really? But you'll need to continue taking your medication at home and rest for a few more weeks." The girls were euphoric with the news. "Mommy is coming home," Ivy said to Graham. "Let's throw her a party," Lila suggested. "Calm down, girls," Marianne laughed. "It's still a few days away." But Graham could see in her eyes that she was also anxious to go home. After lunch, while Marianne was resting, Graham had an idea. "Girls," he said, "how about we go pick out something special for when Mommy comes home?" "What kind of thing?" Lila asked. "I don't know." "You decide. Something to make the house prettier to welcome her." The girls looked at each other, communicating with their eyes as they always did. "Can we go to a flower shop?" Ivy suggested. "A flower shop?" Graham asked. "Mommy loves flowers," Lila explained, "but she never buys them because she says it's an unnecessary expense." "Then let's buy her flowers," Graham decided. They left the hospital and walked a few blocks until they found a small, charming flower shop. The store was filled with colorful plants and flowers, and the sweet scent perfumed the air. "Wow!" Ivy exclaimed, looking around with wide eyes. "It's like a garden inside a house," Lila said, impressed. A gray-haired lady approached them. "Can I help you?" she asked with a gentle smile. "We're looking for something special," Graham explained. "Shy for someone who is recovering in the hospital." "Oh, how lovely," the lady said. "We have several options. Cut flowers, arrangements, plants." "Plants," Lila said quickly. "Plants last longer." "True," Ivy agreed. "Cut flowers die quickly," the lady laughed. "You are very wise. Come, I'll show you our most beautiful plants." She took them to a section of the store filled with small and medium-sized pots. There were purple violets, red mini roses, small succulents, and several other options. "Which one do you think Mommy would like best?" Graham asked. The girls walked among the pots, examining each one carefully. "Samus, this one is pretty," Ivy said, pointing to a pot with small white flowers. "But this one is more colorful," Lila observed, looking at a plant with pink and yellow flowers. You can hold them to get a better feel, the lady suggested. The girls picked up several pots, comparing sizes, colors, and scents. First, this one smells like perfume, Ivy said, sniffing a plant with small, delicate flowers. And the flowers are the color of Mommy's eyes, Lila observed, referring to the small, light blue flowers. I think this is the one, Graham said. It's a perfect match for your mom. What kind of plant is it? Lila asked the lady. It's an African violet, she explained. They are very easy to care for and bloom almost year-round. Perfect, Ivy said. While the lady wrapped the pot in gift paper, the girls admired their choice. Mommy is going to be so happy, Lila said. It's for when Mommy comes home, Ivy explained to Graham, as if she needed to justify the purchase. Graham smiled. These girls always thought of their mother first. She's going to love it, he assured them. They returned to the hospital with the wrapped pot. Marianne was awake, talking with a nurse. We brought a surprise, Ivy announced. What surprise? Marianne asked, curious. Lila handed the gift to her mother. Open it, she said eagerly. Marianne unwrapped it carefully and revealed the pot with the small blue flowers. Oh, girls, she exclaimed, her eyes filling with tears. It's beautiful. We chose flowers the color of your eyes, Ivy explained. And the lady at the shop said it's easy to take care of, Lila added. It's for when you come home, Ivy said, to make the house prettier for you. Marianne hugged her two daughters, moved. Say it's the most beautiful gift I've ever received, she said. Graham watched the scene, feeling a genuine happiness. It was good to see the family reunited and happy again. Graham, Marianne called. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, he replied. Yes, I do, Marianne insisted. You took care of my daughters. You helped me without even knowing us. You have a very good heart. Graham felt his face flush. He wasn't used to such direct compliments. Being with them reminded me that life goes on, he said sincerely. Marianne looked at him with an understanding smile. You needed some healing too, didn't you? Graham nodded. I was very lost after my mother died. I didn't know what my purpose was anymore. And now you know. Graham looked at Lila and Ivy, who were rearranging the flowers in the pot. I think so, he said, or at least I'm starting to figure it out. The girls have become very attached to you, Marianne observed. I've become attached to them too, Graham admitted. They've never had a father figure, Marianne said softly. You filled a void that I couldn't fill alone. Graham didn't know what to say. The conversation was getting more intimate than he had expected. You're a wonderful father, Marianne continued. Even if you're not their biological father. I never thought about being a father, Graham confessed. Sometimes life gives us things we didn't know we wanted, Marianne said. At that moment, Ivy approached him. Graham, will you still take care of us when Mommy comes home? The question was simple, but full of hope. If your mom lets me, yes, Graham replied, looking at Marianne. Of course I'll let you, Marianne said quickly. But you're already a family. A family? Lila asked. You take care of each other, worry about each other, and love each other, Marianne explained. That's what makes a family. Graham felt something stir in his chest. A family. He had lost his and gained a new one, without even realizing how it happened. So, you're going to live with us? Ivy asked Graham. I don't know, Graham laughed. Let's see how things unfold. But you'll keep coming to visit us, Lila asked. Every day, if you want me to, Graham promised. We want you to, the two said together. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. Marianne was visibly stronger, able to stay awake for longer and talk normally. The doctors came by again and confirmed she would be discharged in 2 days. When I get out of here, we're going to have a special dinner, Marianne said, to celebrate and to thank Graham. Can you make that chicken we like? Ivy asked. Of course, Marianne laughed. And dessert too. I'll help cook, Lila offered. And I'll set the table, Ivy added. Graham watched their planning and felt more at home than he had in months. When they left the hospital at the end of the afternoon, the girls were beaming. "Mommy is almost better," Lila said in the car. "And soon she'll be home," Ivy added. "And we'll be a real family," Lila said, looking at Graham in the rearview mirror. Graham smiled. A real family. That sounded good. It sounded like home. That night, after putting the girls to bed, Graham sat in the small living room of the house, looking around. Soon, Marianne would be back, and life would return to normal. But what was normal now? He had entered their lives by chance, but now he knew he didn't want to leave. He had found something he didn't know he was looking for, a family to call his own. The pot with the blue flowers was on the kitchen table, waiting for Marianne's return. It was a symbol of a new beginning, of hope, of life continuing. And Graham finally understood what his mother meant when she talked about finding peace. The peace wasn't in the empty church on that cold night. It was here, in this small house, with two girls sleeping in the next room and a woman recovering in the hospital, waiting to come home. Life really did go on, and he was ready to live it. Graham woke up on Saturday knowing exactly what he needed to do. Marianne would be discharged on Monday, and the small red brick house needed to be perfect to welcome her. "Girls," he said when he arrived to pick them up, "today we're going to get the house ready for Mommy." "What do you mean, get it ready?" Lila asked, curious. "We're going to make everything clean and tidy," Graham explained. "And we're going to fill the pantry with yummy food. Mommy will be so happy," Ivy said, clapping her hands. They started in the living room. Graham looked around and saw what a week of absence had left behind. Scattered magazines, misplaced cushions, a thin layer of dust on the furniture. "Lila, can you help me arrange the cushions on the sofa?" he asked. "Of course," she replied, excited to have an important task. While Lila arranged the blue cushions on the sofa, Graham wiped down the furniture with a damp cloth. Ivy was in charge of putting away the toys scattered on the floor. "Look how nice it's getting," Ivy said, admiring the tidy room. Graham smiled. There was something comforting about taking care of this space. Every piece of furniture he cleaned, every object he put in its right place, was a gesture of affection for the family he had grown to love. "Now for the kitchen," he announced. The kitchen needed the most attention. The sink was full of dishes that had accumulated over the last few days, and the small table was covered with papers and various objects. "Can you dry the dishes while I wash?" Graham asked. "I can," Lila said, grabbing a dish towel. "I want to help too," Ivy protested. "You can organize the papers on the table," Graham suggested. "Separate what's important from what can be thrown away." As he washed the dishes, Graham watched the girls work. Lila dried each plate carefully, as if it was something precious. Ivy made small piles of papers focused on her task. "Graham," Lila said suddenly, "why are you doing all this?" He stopped washing and looked at her. "Because you're important to me," he answered simply. "But it's a lot of work," Ivy observed. "It's not work when you do it with love," Graham explained, returning to the dishes. When they finished the kitchen, it was unrecognizable. The sink was empty, the table was clean, the cupboards were organized. Graham mopped the floor and opened the window to let in fresh air. "It smells clean," Lila commented. "Now for Mommy's room," Graham said. Marianne's room was exactly as she had left it on the morning she was taken to the hospital. The bed was unmade, clothes were on a chair, medications were scattered on the nightstand. Graham started by changing the bed linens. He chose the prettiest sheet set he could find in the closet, a light blue set with small white flowers. "Mommy loves that one," Ivy said, seeing the sheets. "She always says it's the softest." While Graham made the bed, Lila organized the medications into a small basket. Ivy folded the clothes on the chair and put them away in the closet. "Should we put the flower here on the nightstand?" Lila suggested. "Good idea," Graham agreed. They brought the pot with the African violet from the hospital and placed it beside the bed. The small blue flowers added a special touch to the room. "Now for your room," Graham said. The girls' room was tidier, but they wanted to organize everything anyway. Ivy arranged her collection of dolls. while Lila straightened the books on the small shelf. Graham changed the sheets on both beds and opened the curtains to let in more light. The room became cheerful and cozy. "It's perfect," Ivy said, twirling in the middle of the room. "Mommy's going to love it," Lila added. After organizing all the rooms, it was time for the most important part, filling the pantry. "Let's go to the grocery store," Graham announced. At the store, they went down each aisle carefully. Graham made sure to buy everything Marianne and the girls liked. "Mommy likes this cheese here," Lila said, pointing to a specific kind. "And this is our favorite yogurt," Ivy added. Graham put everything in the cart. Fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, bread, milk, eggs, everything a family needed for a few weeks. Can I pick a treat for Mommy?" Ivy asked. "Of course," Graham said. "Pick out something special." The girls chose a dark chocolate bar, Marianne's favorite. When they got back home, Graham organized everything in the pantry and refrigerator. Every item had its proper place. Fruits in the fruit bowl, vegetables in the fridge drawer, dry goods in the cupboards. "Wow, it's full of food," Lila exclaimed, looking at the refrigerator. "Mommy won't have to worry about shopping for a while," Graham explained. Ivy opened the pantry door and sighed with satisfaction. "It has everything we like," she said. Lastly, Graham gave the house a final once-over. He vacuumed the living room, cleaned the bathrooms, and checked that everything was in its place. "Should we put fresh flowers on the living room table?" he suggested. "Yes," they both agreed. They went back to the flower shop and bought a small bouquet of wildflowers, white and yellow daisies that filled the room with color and perfume. By the time they finished, it was late afternoon. Graham and the girls sat on the sofa and looked around. The house was transformed. Every room was clean and organized, the pantry was full, and fresh flowers decorated the spaces. There was a nice smell of cleanliness mixed with the scent of the flowers. "Mommy is going to cry with happiness," Lila said. "She really will," Ivy agreed. "She's not going to believe it." Graham observed the work they had done together. It wasn't just a clean house. It was a home prepared with love to welcome someone special. "Do you think she'll like it?" he asked. "She'll love it," Lila assured him. "You made our house feel even more like a home." Graham didn't quite understand what she meant, but he felt it was a compliment. "We've never had anyone take care of our house like this," Ivy said. "Only Mommy." "And now you're here too," Lila added. Graham looked around one more time. He had spent the whole day organizing this house, and he hadn't said a word about why. He didn't need to. The love was in every gesture, in every detail taken care of with affection. When Marianne came home on Monday, she would find more than a clean house. She would find a home prepared by people who cared about her. "Shall we have dinner?" Graham asked. "Let's," the girls replied together. They went to the kitchen, which now sparkled, and Graham prepared a simple dinner with the fresh ingredients he had bought. As they cooked, the house filled with another good smell, the smell of a home-cooked meal being prepared with care. It was the smell of life returning to that house. Marianne came home on Monday afternoon after being discharged from the hospital. When she opened the door to the small red brick house, she paused for a moment in the entryway, looking around in complete surprise. "Wow," she whispered, placing a hand on her chest. The living room was impeccable. The furniture gleamed, the cushions on the blue sofa were perfectly arranged, and the fresh daisies on the table filled the room with color and perfume. The smell of clean mixed with flowers gave the house a completely refreshed feel. "Do you like it, Mommy?" Ivy asked, running to her and holding her hand anxiously. It's perfect," Marianne replied, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't believe it. Graham helped us make everything nice for you," Lila explained proudly. "He organized all the rooms and filled the pantry with food," Ivy added. Marianne walked through the house slowly, as if rediscovering her own home. She touched the living room furniture, went into the kitchen, and opened the fridge, sighing when she saw so much fresh food. When she opened the pantry, her eyes widened. There was enough food for weeks. "He didn't have to do all this," she said, moved. He said he did it with love, Lila recounted. Marianne went to her own room and found the bed made with her favorite sheets, the blue ones with little white flowers. On the nightstand, the African violet they had chosen together was perfectly positioned. Graham had stayed back during her exploration of the house, watching her every reaction. "Thank you," she said finally, approaching him, "from the bottom of my heart." "It was my pleasure," Graham replied. "You deserve to come back to a cozy home." In the following days, Marianne recovered with impressive speed. The rosy color returned to her cheeks, and she could stand for long periods without getting tired. "I'm going back to work on Friday," she announced on Wednesday during lunch. "Already, Mommy?" Lila asked, concerned. "The doctor said I can work part-time to start," Marianne explained, "and I need to go back. I've been out of work for 2 weeks." Graham understood her financial worries. "If you need anything," he began. "You've already done more than enough," Marianne interrupted gently. "And we're going back to school on Monday," Ivy announced. "That's great," Graham said. "Did you miss your friends?" "A little," Lila admitted. "Guy, but I was also scared to leave Mommy alone." "I'm fine now," Marianne assured them, "and you need to study." On Thursday evening, as Graham was getting ready to leave, Marianne made a proposal. "Graham," she said, "how about having dinner with us tomorrow? I want to make a special meal to thank you for everything you've done." "You don't have to go to any trouble," Graham replied. "It's no trouble," Marianne insisted. "It's a pleasure. You're part of our family now." "Yes, you are," Ivy agreed. "You have to come." "Please," Lila pleaded. "Hi, Mommy is going to make apple pie." Graham smiled, looking at the 3 hopeful faces. "All right," he accepted. "How could I refuse?" 7 o'clock, Marianne said, "and come hungry." On Friday, Graham arrived promptly at 7, wearing a light blue dress shirt and carrying flowers for Marianne. When Lila opened the door, he smelled a delicious aroma coming from the kitchen. Roast chicken, aromatic spices, and the sweet scent of apple pie. "You're here," she shouted, pulling him by the hand. "Graham!" Ivy ran to greet him, wearing a special little dress. The kitchen table was set like Graham had never seen it before. There was an embroidered tablecloth that looked like a family heirloom, porcelain dishes reserved for special occasions, glass goblets, and even lit candles in the center, creating a cozy atmosphere. "You've really gone all out," Graham said, impressed, handing her the flowers. "How beautiful," Marianne exclaimed. "You didn't have to. Mommy wanted to make everything special," Lila explained. "She said you deserve it." "We took out the good china," Ivy added, "the one we only use at Christmas." Marianne appeared holding a platter, wearing a blue dress that enhanced her light eyes. She was radiant, with a healthy glow on her face. "Welcome to our official thank you dinner," she said. "It smells absolutely wonderful," Graham commented. "Roast chicken with herbs, golden potatoes and vegetables," Marianne announced with pride. "And for dessert, apple pie with cinnamon." "I helped peel the apples," Ivy said, "and I helped season the potatoes," Lila added. They sat down at the table and Marianne began to serve. The chicken was golden and juicy, the potatoes perfectly seasoned. It was a simple meal, but made with so much care that it felt like a banquet. "This is absolutely delicious," Graham said after the first bite. "Mommy is the best cook in the world," Ivy said. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Graham asked. My mother taught me," Marianne replied. "She always said that food made with love feeds more than just the body. It feeds the soul too." During dinner, they talked about everything. The girls told stories about the school friends they missed. Marianne talked about her gradual return to work. Graham listened, participated, and felt completely at home. "Graham," Marianne said as they were finishing the main course, "I never really asked about your family. You said you lost your mother, but I'd like to know more." Graham stopped eating and was quiet for a moment. "You can tell us," Ivy encouraged. "We understand about people who go to heaven." Graham smiled, touched by the girl's sensitivity. "My mother died 2 months ago," he said slowly. From cancer. She fought for a long time. That must have been very hard, Marianne said softly. It was, Graham admitted. Especially since it was just the two of us. My father died when I was a teenager. Just like us, Lila observed. But the other way around. Graham nodded. After she died, I felt completely lost, he continued. I didn't know what my purpose in life was anymore. And now you know, Marianne asked. Graham looked at her, then at Lila and Ivy. I lost my mum and thought everything was over, he said slowly. But being with you has made me see that life goes on. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Marianne had tears in her eyes. You saved our family, she said quietly. You saved me too, Graham replied. You gave me a reason to keep going. We're a team, Ivy said. The best team in the world, Lila agreed. Marianne got up and brought the apple pie, still warm. It was golden and fragrant, with a perfect crust. This pie is very special, she announced. It's my mother's recipe, which was her mother's recipe. 4 generations of the same recipe, Graham observed. And now you know it too, Ivy said. That makes you a real part of the family. As they ate dessert, Graham thought about how his life had changed. 2 months ago, he was alone in an empty apartment, without purpose. Now he was sitting at the table of a family that had adopted him. Starting Monday, our routine will change, Marianne said. I go back to work, the girls go back to school. And you, Graham? Lila asked. What will you do? It was a question he had been asking himself. His leave from work was ending. I'll be going back to work too, he said. But I'd like to continue being a part of your lives. Of course we'll let you, Marianne said quickly. You're part of our family now. Really? Graham asked. Really? The 3 of them answered together, and they all laughed. 2 weeks later, the new routine was established. Marianne went back to her job at the laundromat, starting part-time. The girls went back to school and reconnected with their friends. And Graham discovered that he had become a fundamental part of the family. Every morning, he would stop by the house before work for coffee with them. He would take the girls to school when Marianne needed to go in early. He would pick them up when she worked overtime. On weekends, he always showed up for lunch or dinner, sometimes bringing ingredients for them to cook together. He took the girls to the park when Marianne needed to rest. Other times, they would simply stay home, talking, watching movies, or doing activities together. Is Graham coming for Sunday lunch? Had become an automatic question from the girls. Of course he is, Marianne would always reply. He always comes. And it was true. Graham always showed up. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to be there. Because that small house had become his home just as much as the apartment where he slept. He helped with the groceries, always knowing what each of them liked. He fixed things that broke around the house. He helped the girls with their homework, discovering he had the patience to teach. Small things, everyday actions that were essential to the family's functioning. You've become our official stand-in, Dad, Ivy said one day, and Graham laughed. Stand-in, Dad? You do everything a dad would do, Lila explained. But you don't live here. Maybe one day he will, Ivy said hopefully. Graham didn't answer, but the idea no longer scared him. It sounded natural. The neighbors had gotten used to seeing him around. The woman at the bakery always asked about him. The girls' teachers knew who he was when he went to pick them up. That's Graham, they would introduce him. For us, he's our family. And he really was, not by blood, but by choice, by love. One Sunday afternoon, 3 months after their first meeting at the church, Graham was sitting in the small backyard, watching Lila and Ivy play. Marianne came over with coffee and sat next to him. Did you know you would stay? She asked. What do you mean? When you found the girls, note. Did you know you would become part of our family? Graham thought for a moment. No, he said honestly. I just knew I had to help. And what do you feel now? Graham looked at the girls, then at the house, then at Marianne. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, he replied. Marianne smiled. They adore you, she said. And I do too. Graham felt his heart race. "I adore you all too," he said. "You've completely changed my life." "You changed ours too," Marianne replied. That night, after the girls were asleep, Graham said goodbye at the door as he always did. But this time, when Marianne hugged him, the hug lasted a little longer. "See you tomorrow," she said. "I'll see you tomorrow," he replied, because there was always a tomorrow. There was always a reason to come back. Graham had entered their lives in silence, on a cold October night, carrying the pain of loss and the loneliness of someone who no longer knew how to live. He made no noise, announced no intentions, promised nothing, but he stayed. He stayed for love. And now he was part of that family as if he had always belonged, as if God really had sent him that night to heal two wounds at once, his and theirs. Life really did go on, and he was living it to the fullest, surrounded by people he loved and who loved him back. He arrived in silence. He stayed for love,